Today's daf is daf Lamed Ches, and the daf begins as a continuation with some of the sfeikos that we discussed yesterday, and with an analysis about the concept called Hadar Dina or Lo Hadar Dina, which was a machlokes between Admon and the Chacham, if you remember. So we had the question of Hadar Dina or Kam Dina, and the Gemara wanted to suggest that perhaps the issue really is a machlokes between Admon and the Chachamim. Somebody had a derech, he went to Medina Sayyam, they lost the derech, he came back. And the question is whether or not he has a right to demand a derech. And Admon was of the opinion that he could force the Bali Asados and the surrounding Sados to give him a derech. He once owned a derech, he gets it back. And the Chacham say no. He'll have to pay whatever he has to pay in order to buy a derech. And the Gemara thinks that Admon's logic is very powerful. Why shouldn't he get a derech? He lost the derech, he wants it back. And the Gemara answers that he was surrounded on all four sides, and anytime he would come to any one of the owners of any of the respective four sides, they would always push him off and say, you didn't have a derech by me. And then one of them purchased the other four. He bought out the other three. So that's going to be the machlokas. Admon holds that the one who lost a derech and he comes back now to claim his derech, he says that you're standing in the place of the other three, and for sure you owe me a derech. And the Rabbanan say, wait a minute, you know what? Shaskis shaskis. If you won't be tovea a derech, then I'll sell you a derech. I'll give you a good deal on it. I won't overcharge you. Give you a decent price. If not, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the shtar and null and void the purchases of the various four sides, and then you're stuck with nothing because you'll have to go back to each one of the owners and they're going to push you off. So the Gemara says, we'll take a look at the Gemara here on the bottom of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis before we start our Daf for today. Lema, shall we assume, this is 2.5 lines up before the end of Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, Lema, Rabbi Abba di Omar K'Rabbanan, Rabbi Yirmiyah di Omar Ka'admon. That Rabbi Abba, who said Kam Dina in the case of the Yavam, the Suffolk in Yerusha, he holds like the Rabbanan that you cannot claim a derech, and that's based on the principle of Kam Dina, because he didn't have a schus to be tovea the derech from any one of the four neighbors. And at that point in time, he lost his rights to claim a derech. And even though the situation changes now, when one individual buys out the other, Pali Asados Misavim, but nevertheless, Kam Dina. We're not going to go back and undermine the original din. Rabbi Yomi, on the other hand, who's of the opinion of Hadar Dina, he's Ka'admon, meaning that the Kona lo ibed es chuso b'kach, and he still has his old schus is still very much alive, active, and valid, and he has a right to be tovea that schus. When there's only one person who owns all the sadas, because now he can say, look, Hadar Dina, now it's a new din, and I definitely have a derech by you because you own all the four fields around us. And the Gemara says, Amar l'cha Rabbi Abba, no, the Amri afilu ka'admon. I can square even though I hold Kamdina, even according to Admon. Adkan lo Kamar Admon Hasam. When does Admon insist that the Baal HaDerech has a schus to go back and claim his derech from this person who bought all the other fields around him? Elami Shumdi Amar Le, the Baal HaDerech, meaning the person who went to Medina Yam and he lost his derech, has he right to claim to the person who bought all the fields with what we call a Tainus Bari, a certain claim, Mimonavshach. Here we turn to Daf Lamed Ches. Mimonavshach Dark Chad Gabochu. There's no question that I had a derech and it's by you. And therefore, based on that Tainus Bari, he has a right to undermine any original situation that existed, and we're not going to say kam dini, but hadar dini. Aval hacha, but here in the case of a safek ubnei yavam, they come to divide the nichsei yavam, and here we don't have a tainus bari. Why? Mi ikol meimar hach. Can we say that the safek has a tainus bari on any particular portion of the estate? He himself doesn't know for sure if he's the ben ames or he's the ben ayavam. And on the side that he's a ben ayavam, so he doesn't automatically inherit the nechasim. Again, he deserves a portion amongst the other brothers. So what is he saying? He's coming and claiming a chelik of Yerusha Mimonavshach. He's saying, look, either give me back half of the nichsei ames, because you're claiming that I am the son, not of your father, but of the mes, so then I certainly should get it back. Or at least give me a chelik shava, give me an equal chelik with the bnei yavam if I'm the son of your father, if I'm your brother. In this case, even Admon would agree that kam dina. Why? Because the suffix is coming from two different tainas. Each taina is a suffix. So on each taina, we have a right to counter and say, bring me a raya. Rabbi Yirmiyah Amalach, Ano Diamri Afilu Rabbana. Rabbi Yirmiyah says, I can square off, even though I hold Hadar Dine, even with Rabbanan. I can look at me Rabbanan Hasam, where the Rabbanan insists that he lost his derech, he lost his claim, Elamishum Biamarle, Ishasak, Shasak, Ve'ilo Madrina Shtar Lemare, Below Matzi Ishta Ui Dini Badai. If I get back to Shtaros and I null and void all the sales, you're not going to be able to stand in front of Beis Din with a claim that you own a derech, because each one will put you to the next one. So you're going to have to buy a derech, and you're going to have to spend a lot of money for that. So Rabbanan say kam dine, and he doesn't get it there. But hacha, in the case of bnei yavam, mikol meimarachi, can the bnei yavam say to him, look, ishasak shasak, v'im lo achzir shtar lemochrim? There is no possibility, and here the Rabbanon would be modeh to the halach of hadar dina, and the safek would be able to receive a chelik from his brothers, or chatzi nichsei ames. Now the Gemara goes on to another case of safek, another scenario. Safek v'yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei sama. Right, so you have Yaakov is the father of both Shimon and Reuven. Shimon's married to Sarah and he dies. Reuven is miyabim Shimon. And now Sarah gives birth to a safek. We don't know whether he's the son of Shimon, the late Shimon, or the son of Reuven. And now Yaakov, the grandfather, dies. And the safek would claim that he is the son of Shimon, and therefore he gets 50% of the Yerusha. Reuven's going to claim the safek is his son, and he doesn't get anything. Safek Omar Hai Gavra. He's referring to himself. Bar Misnahu. I am the son of the late Shimon, and therefore I get half of the nechasim of Yaakov, of the grandfather. Upalgadi Dehavi. Yavam Omar Ad Broi Didia. You're my son, and therefore you don't get anything. Less lachal midi. Havi Yavam Vadai. So it means that Reuven is certainly a son of Yaakov, the late Yaakov who just passed away. So therefore, he certainly inherits the grandfather. And the suffix, he's not even a definite Yorich. It could be he's not a Yorich at all if he's the son of Reuven and not the son of Shimon, the ain't suffix motzav de vadai. And therefore, the Yavam will get the entire Yerusha of Grandpa Yaakov. Another scenario. Safek ubnei Yavam shabo lachlok b'nichsei Saba. So here's a case where Yaakov has two sons, Reuven and Shimon. Shimon is married to Sarah. And after the death of Shimon, Reuven is miyabim Sarah, and they give birth to a Safek. We don't know if he's the son of Reuven or the son of Shimon. And Reuven has two sons, Avram and Yitzchak. And now Yaakov dies, and Avram and Yitzchak are coming to claim the Yerusha from Yaakov because Shimon is gone. So there's only one Yoresh left, meaning Reuven. And they are the children of Reuven. Insofar as they stand in place of their father, they can now claim the Yerusha of Yaakov. However, the Suffolk is going to claim, I'm the son of Shimon, and therefore I get the entire Yerusha, or alternatively, I'm the son of Reuven and I get 1/3 of the Yerusha as one of the brothers. So Safek uvnei Yavam shebo lachlok b'nichsei Safek Omer Ahu Gavra, referring to himself bar misanahu. Right, I'm the son of Shimon who died, who's the son of Saba, and therefore Palgadidiu, I split it with your father Reuven. I get 50% of the Yerusha of Yaakov. Bnei Yavan Amru, Achuna At, you're our brother. Umenasa Islach Vadon, you just have your chelik amongst the brothers. Nothing more that you can get. So Palgadikamodi Lahu, half of the Nechasim, which the Suffolk himself is Moda, that goes to the Bnei Yavam, whoever the Bnei Yavam are. But that represents the 50% of the estate of Yaakov that goes to Reuven. No one could deny that. Is therefore Shakli. They have the right to take half of the properties of Yaakov up front. So that they get, no question about it. Then we move on. And Tilsa de Komodule Shakit. So 1/3 of the Yerusha, the Bnei Reuven, we call them Avram and Yitzchak, admit that the Safek gets 1/3 of the Yerusha of Yaakov. So now let's divide up the Nechasim into 6 equal parts. 3 parts go to the Bnei Yavam. That means Avram and Yitzchak. However, the Suffolk now gets, we're left with 3 parts. He gets 2 out of those 3. Why? Because according to everybody, the Suffolk deserves 1/3 of the Yerusha of Yaakov, the grandfather. Because even according to the Taina, the claim of the Bnei Reuven, of Bnei Yavam, namely Avram and Yitzchak, the Suffolk gets one chelik. So that's 1/3 of the Yerusha. That's upgrade. That goes without talking. So 1/3 of Yerusha of 6 halakim is 2/6. Is partially danka. Now we're left with 1/6 that's in the pot. The suffix is claiming he gets that because he's the son of Shimon who gets 50% of the Yerusha. So he gets the third of the half, meaning the 6/6 to add to his 2/6. On the other hand, the Bnei Hayavam, that means Avram and Yitzchak, they're claiming that he's a brother and therefore he only gets 1/3, which is the 2 chalakim. He's claiming he gets the third chelik. So on that last chelik, which is 1/6, we say yachloku is mamen hamuta b'safek v'cholkin. And finally, the last scenario of these fakers, Saba v'yavam b'nichsei safek. In this case, the safek himself dies. So we have Yaakov, who has 2 sons, Reuven and Shimon. Shimon has a wife named Sarah. Shimon dies and leaves a suffix. Right? I forgot to mention that Reuven was Miyabim, the wife of the late Shimon. And then Sarah, the wife of the late Shimon, who's now the wife of Reuven the Yavam, gives birth to a suffix situation. And now the suffix dies. So let's see what the claims are and the counterclaims on the estate of the Saba, of the suffix. The Saba himself, that's Yaakov, he's claiming that the suffix is Shimon's son, which means that the Yerusha of the suffix goes to his father Shimon, and now Reuven's only a brother, whereas Yaakov is a father. So Yaakov has first rights to the Yerusha. In that case, the entire estate of the suffix goes through Shimon, his father, back to Yaakov. On the other hand, Reuven is claiming that, just one second. Correct. That means that according to Yaakov's claim, if the suffix is the son of Shimon, then Reuven's status is only that of an uncle. Reuven, on the other hand, is claiming that the suffix is his son. And therefore, he should inherit his son, the suffix. So it means each one is claiming the entire Yerusha, whether it's Yaakov's claim or Reuven's claim, the other. So what do we do in such a case? He says, O Saba v'asafik b'nichsei Yavan is having moment of mutabit b'cholkim. Each one has a complete total claim on the nechasim, and we can't prove it either way. Therefore, we'll say yachlok. This leads us to the Mishnah on Daf Lamed Ches of Shomeres Yavam. So a woman's husband died without children. She's waiting for the Yavam to be miyabim or to be choletz. Now her father dies while she's a Shomeres Yavam, waiting for Yibum, and she wants to inherit her father. Modem Beit Sham Beisil, there's no machlokas here in this case that she has rights to those nechasim, and a mocheres v'nosenes b'kayim. She can do whatever she wants. She has her own discretion, her own decision. She can sell that or give that as a matana, that those nechas. Mesa. What happens now if she dies as a shomeres yavam? Ma yasa b'ksubasa. So we have the mana of ksubas almana or grusha, or the masayim of a ksubas besula, and there's tosefes ksuba. There's nechsei on barzel, nechasim nechnasim yotzim ima. These are pieces of property, real estate, or avodim, or tzon, and she brought this into the marriage. That's called nechsei maluk. And in Nichsei Maluk, she owns the guf, and the parents belong to her husband. So what do we do with these nechas? The Yarshei Av of this woman have a claim that since she was only a shomeres yavam, therefore they inherit her. Now, there's another svara to say that since she's a shomeres yavam, the yavam has a right to inherit. Is Beit Shammai omrim yachloku yorshei abal im yorshei av? The status and the din of a shomeres yavam is like a suffix. We don't know whether she's married or not. If she's married, then her husband, or in this case, right, let's say the Yavam is still alive, so her husband should inherit her. Because Shomeres Yavam is like an Asua, she's like married. Or shall we say no, she's not yet married, she's only a Shomeres Yavam, so she's only a Suffolk Nesua. So according to Beit Shammai, Yachloku Yorshei Abal in Yorshei Ha'av. The Yarshim of the Yavam, together with the Yarshei Ha'av, have equal claims to the estate of the Shomeres Yavam, and therefore we split it. Beisil Omrim Nechasim B'Chazkasa. Let's leave everything in its chazak, as it were, status quo. Ksuba, which is her rights to claim the kesef ksuba, whether it's Madam Masayim, as we discussed, and she has rights to inherit the ksuba from the nichsei abal, because whenever a woman becomes widowed from the estate of her former late husband, she collects her ksuba. Is becheskes Yorshei Abal. In other words, the Yorshei Av have no right to collect that ksuba, because that ksuba is going to be collected from the estate of the Baal after his death. And that means that all of those nechasim are becheskes habal. Now, he died and left his wife as a shomeres yavam. So therefore, the Yorshei Abal are muchzakim. They have a din, a status of chazak, to the exclusion of Yorshei Beis Ha'av. They don't have rights to collect ksuba from the nichsei Abal. But then there are nechasim and echnasim biyotzim ima, which we said on nichsei malug that she brought into the marriage. Now, if she were alive and with the death of her husband, she would fall for Yibum, she still owns the Guf Hanachas, because Nichse Malug always belonged to the Isha. That's what she brought into the marriage, and she still retains ownership over them. And the Yavam only has what we call Schus Achilas Peros. So now she dies without Yibum, and we said that the Nechasim remain in the Chazak of her Mishpach. So what does that mean? B'chezkes Yoshia. And so her father's Yarshim, like let's say her brothers, they will inherit. So that's all in the case of Shomeres Yavam. But Knasa, if the Yavam already married her, Harehi ki ishtal chol dava. Which number one means that if he wants to divorce her, he gives her a get. She doesn't need chalitza. It means that even if he divorced her, he could remarry her. And she's ki ishtal b'chol dava. Ubilvad should take suba al nichse baila harisha. In other words, with regard to only one specific bin, she's not considered ishta. And that is that the Yavam is not chayiv to pay her ksuba in event that he divorces her, or it's not collectible from his estate after he dies. He doesn't have a shibud ksuba because isha hiknu lo min hashamayim. He never married her. If he marries a woman, then he did it willingly, knowing that he has to pay the ksuba. He's committed, he's mischayev to the ksuba. But in the case of Yavam, he never decided to marry this woman. Shamayim min hashamayim hiknu lo, and therefore he doesn't have to pay the ksuba. Now, in the ratio of this Mishnah that we just learned, we're talking about a Shomeres Yavam, and her father died and left her an estate. And she inherits her father, and she's a Shomeres Yavam. So the Gemara asks, Maishna Reisha de lo pligi, umaishna sefer de pligi. So in the Reisha, there's no machlokas between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. And everybody agrees that the nechasim of her father are bechezkasa. She could sell them. She can give away as a gift. They're her possessions. She inherited her father. No one denies that. Umaishna sefer de pligi. Why is it that in the sefer when she died, we're going to have machlokes between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel? Beit Shammai are going to say that Nichse Malug are not bechezkas Yorsheha, so her Yorshim do not have rights to her Nichse Malug, and therefore those Nechasim will be divided together with the Yavam. And Beit Hillel disagree. Omar Ula, Reisha de Naflik Shi Arusa, Useifa de Naflik Shi Nesua. In the Reisha, she fell for Yibum after Erison. Her late husband only married her with Kedushin, right? Kesef Ishtar. And now when she inherits a Yerusha from her father, and she's a Shomeres Yavam in Erison, and we're going to see that Erison is like a Suffolk Arusa, it's almost like a Zika situation. And therefore she inherits, even according to Beit Shammai, her father's Nechas. But Seifa, and here's where Beit Shammai are of the opinion that the Nechasim are bechezkas the Yavam, that's a case of Naflak Shi Nesua. So she's already married, and now her father dies, she inherits the estate of her father as a full-fledged marriage. What do I mean? Although she inherited her father while she was a Shomeres Yavam, but nevertheless, her late husband had not only done Erisin, he also did Nesuin. And at that point, he takes over her Nechasim. So the Gemara now clarifies what Ula had in mind. Because Savar Ula, Zikas Arusa, Oses Safek Arusa. The Zika of a Yavam to an Arusa, meaning where her late husband did Erisin, generates a status of a relationship between her and the Yavam of Safek Arusa. Notice we always go down one level from the first marriage to the late husband to the second level, which is called Zikas Yibum, after the death of the husband. So if we're going down from Nesuin, we go down to Erisin. If we go from Erisin down, we get to a level called Safek Arusa. That's like the lowest level, bottom of the barrel, so to speak. So in the case of the Reisha, where we're talking about a woman who fell for Yibum when she was an Arusa to her late husband, Beit Shammai hold that Arusa could sell Hanachasim Lechatchila. How much more so to Shemeres Yavan? She's only a Safek Arusa. And therefore the Nechasim are B'chezkasa. Right? In other words, her marriage relationship as an Erisin is not strong enough to give her husband rights to take over her Nechasim that she inherits from her father. How much more so if her husband dies after Erisin, and now we get down to the lower level of Zikas Yibum to the Yavam, is for sure he has no rights to take over her possessions that she inherits from her father. And therefore, Beit Shammai insists, Mocheres v'nosenes v'kayam. She could sell these nechasim, and laissez-faire. She has free access to these nechasim that she inherits from her father, because it's not only an arusa, it's even less than arusa. It's one level lower, and that's zikas yibum. Beis Hill is going to say that an arusa cannot sell these nechasim lechatchila, but b'di'evet, if she went ahead and sold it, then we validate the mechir, we recognize its significance. A shomeres yavam, on the other hand, is a safek arusa. There's really no ishus, well, no complete ishus in any event. So they'll be modeh that she could sell these nechasim or give them away even lechatchila, and that's valid, because it's only a level of safek arusa. And now we turn to Daf Lamed Ches Amid Beis.